WNST, Texas next week for all things Super Bowl 51. We also have our big trip to London now on sale at WNST.net. The league confirmed that that game will be played on September 24th. We've already got over 50 people headed with us. We're expecting to take maybe 300 people with us over to London in September. So jump on the trip, jump on the website, and learn more. And while we're talking football, and I've got Caps, and I've got Terps, and I've got Wizards, and all of this other Ravens off-season stuff with Zach Orr, amongst others, it is really, and I'm wearing my Oriole white-paneled 1983 bird cap, my Lowenstein special, because it is baseball season again, kind of sort of around here as we get for pitchers and catchers in about 3 weeks. Reporting on the back end of the Super Bowl, Seth Gruen covers all things Major League Baseball as an insider at Bleacher Report and in the Chicagoland area in various radio places. You can follow him out on Twitter at Seth Gruen. He's one of our defending champions, and they're still hung over on the north side out there, right, Seth?
Yeah, you got it. I think people are still walking around in a daze trying to figure out where they work.
Right, and it's almost spring training again. And I'll tell you one thing, here we're in the AL East, and the Orioles are going to be chasing the Red Sox, at least in theory, until they get to the field, and we see what Sale looks like and what the Red Sox upgrades look like. But it's a Cubs world, right? I mean, the Cubs are prohibitive favorites, and, they're expected to win 100 games again this year, I think.
Yeah, and I think you felt like that even before free agency started, just because there was such a limited number of things that each team could do to upgrade itself. You alluded to the Sale trade. That was probably the biggest thing that happened this offseason. But there really wasn't a lot available to teams via the free agent market to really change the dynamic of some of these races, or at least the dynamic through which they were, perceived to play out. We all know this isn't a scripted sport. Sports aren't scripted, so something's going to happen that surprises us, but nonetheless, I agree. The Cubs should win 100 games, and they should be the favorite again to win the World Series.
Well, you talk about going off the script, and, life takes incredible turns. Last summer, it was Jose Fernandez down in Miami on a boat making bad decisions after dark with alcohol. Now we find that Yordano Ventura, Sunday morning you wake up and there's two Major League Baseball players, he as well as Marti, a former Major League player, killed in the Dominican. But the Ventura story, this is... Kansas City's such a joyous place, right? And they've won, and he was such a part of it. It was such a incredible, more so than a lot of other places. And no disrespect to the Cavaliers in Cleveland or the Cubs in Chicago, but I really felt like that Kansas City story was special, and he will be forever tied to that. And I think a lot of Royals fans, a lot of baseball fans woke up on Sunday morning and just couldn't make heads or tails of a 24-year-old kid that's gone.
Yeah, look, people love that underdog story in Kansas City. Obviously, anytime a small market team wins the World Series, as the Royals did, you're going to get some of that feeling from the baseball fan base. As far as Yordano Ventura goes, I know there'll be some talk about, maybe some unrealized potential or, struggle to sort of consistently pitch at a high level, but, he was a guy with a tremendous arm. But I think more so from the human element and the human side of things. You look at a loss like this, just so young, and it resonates with so many people. Athletes allow themselves into, or allow us into their lives, and I think anytime we hear of such news, it hits home, because for a lot of Royals fans, Yordano Ventura, is on their TV set every day. So, it's just tragic. It's, there's no other way to categorize it, and I was shocked to see it. I don't know the details of it, but, most people get in a car every day. I'm about to get in one, and, they feel like they're going to get from point A to point B safely, and when it doesn't happen, it's just jarring.
He is Seth Gruen. He is out in Chicago, covering all things baseball and getting ready for spring training. And, the Orioles, this hasn't been a monumental offseason in any way, even going back to the winter meetings that were held down the street here in Maryland. And
it really is for them.
That's a good point. But they did spend a lot of money on Chris Davis, at least signing their own guys. And this year, it was Trumbo that hit the market. I think if you and I would have gotten together back on October 1st and talked about Mark Trumbo to say it only takes one team out out there now to go and give a guy that they want to try to hit 40 home runs in the middle of their lineup. Some folks thought Colorado might have been a suitor for him. Some folks thought the Orioles didn't really want him all that much, and they offered him even more money back at the beginning of the owners' meetings than he wound up getting, at least publicly. We never really know how that goes with the Orioles. It's an alternative truth type of place, the Orioles. But that being said, there is no alternative truth to this. He'll be in the lineup on opening day, and they're probably a better baseball team, but we're back to playing beer league softball again here, Seth.
Yeah, look, the Rockies obviously made sense. The ball flies out there in Coors Field because of the high elevation, but I never really believed the Orioles were out of this. There was a lot of public posturing, and we see this time and again with lots of negotiations. But when you consider the fact that it's a division that's, you can win with the home run ball, and the fact that Mark Trumbo has the kind of bat that can lead Major League Baseball in home runs, it just made too much sense for the Orioles. And quite frankly, like you said, maybe the numbers aren't exact just because of where it's coming from, but it appears to me that they got a bargain. I mean, can you imagine a couple years ago or 5-6 years ago saying you're going to get a 40 home run guy for, close to $10 million, or what is it, 12, 13 million? And that to me is a bargain, because with Mark Trumbo in your lineup, you're in every game, because I've said it time and again, that one swing of the bat capability keeps you in any game, and it can add to any lead. So it's an incredible asset, and I think it really helps the Orioles become contenders again in the AL East.
Well, it's also a duplication or a replication of Chris Davis in the lineup, and I thought he was the safety last year. He was the guy they brought in because they didn't think they were going to keep Chris Davis. Not only did they keep Chris Davis and gave him a king's ransom, they've now kept Mark Trumbo and given him a king's ransom, and we're back to the point where, they expect to win games 8-6 and 9-7 a lot of nights, I think.
Which is okay, right? Counts the same in the win column.
Fair enough.
I think that we, had this conversation at this time last year, and we talked about the starting pitching, and at the end of the day, the Orioles were, playing in October. They only played one game, but they were playing in October. So I think any way you can find ways to win baseball games is fine. They have obviously a solid bullpen, and I think that they're one of the few teams in baseball that can kind of get away with, their pitchers going 5-6 innings a night just because there's so much depth there. So, this is an organization, and I know that a lot of people in Baltimore have a bone to pick with ownership, but this is an organization that has found some creative ways to win baseball games. And look, they're a late surging team in terms of the free agent market and off-season moves. They're maybe the most late surging team.
You've just used the word surging twice. I don't know if they ever really surge.
Well, I mean, they get these things done at the 11th hour. So, but we could debate that sort of approach all we want, but over the past few years, it's worked. So, I love the Mark Trumbo deal for them, and I think it's huge. I don't think it can be understated.
Well, and I think there's an amount of patience that goes into it for Duquette and for Angelos and the way they work, that the patience has been rewarded lately because the market's not the way it used to be, where, it only takes one, right? I mean, we learned that in the NFL, where we see these teams with all this cap space. They have, that they don't have to spend it, but they like to spend it. And every year you see guys where your jaw drops and you say, what? Baseball went through that for a long, long, long time. It feels like there is more, I don't know, I don't want to use the C word, I don't want to say collusion, but it certainly feels as though mediocre players, everyone's gearing up for Machado and gearing up for Bryce Harper at this point, right? I mean, it's obvious there are a lot of teams like the Phillies and the Yankees that are just saving their money for that.
Yeah, look, I think, again, this is a very, very unusual offseason, and that the free agent class was so weak, and you're talking about some premier players who are going to become free agents next offseason and the offseason after, that teams really weren't going to overpay for really, I think you just said it, mediocre talent. So, again, I'm not ready to ordain the Orioles the best organization in baseball, but I do think that they deserve credit over the past couple of years for having an understanding of how the market operates and really being able to take the temperature of that market and make moves that they wanted to do. I know that they lost out on Dexter Fowler. They probably made a mistake by not offering him an opt-out. But, nonetheless, I don't think that would have gotten them over the hump or necessarily would have pushed them, to that AL East crown, and them, we'd be talking about them playing in an ALDS. But I don't think Dexter Fowler's the difference there.
Well, dude, we might be talking about them playing in an ALDS if they didn't put their season on the line with the ball to Jimenez and let Zach Britton still sit at the end of the bench. I mean, it's not like they couldn't have won the World Series last year. They could have, Yeah.
Yeah, look, 100%, I agree. I think Buck Showalter made some mistakes. There's no doubt about it. But at the end of the day, back to the original point is, I think the organization deserves some credit for its understanding of how the market operates and how it ebbs and flows, and using that to their advantage and to the way they want to approach it. Now, we could sit here and certainly debate the way they go about building their roster, and maybe they're too penny wise and whatnot, but the reality is they've been able to sort of get by with this philosophy. And look, that takes some know-how on their part.
He is Seth Gruen. He covers all things baseball out in the Chicagoland area and out at Bleacher Report. You can follow his journey all over the world on Twitter at Seth Gruen. That's Gruen, like my late great friend Wayne Gruen, back when I began my radio career 20 years ago. Baseball, for all these teams, we'll talk about Chicago. Are the Red Sox the most improved team? And maybe that's hard to say when you've won 93 games last year, but it feels as though they've elevated themselves into this area of being the favorite ahead of, let's say, Texas and Cleveland and some other teams that played some better baseball. I mean, I think there's a feeling that Toronto is now faded, that the Yankees are still sort of waiting it out a little bit, and that the Red Sox are just better than everyone else. I don't know that there's anybody else to talk about that's improved enough that we would say, well, they look more like a playoff team this year.
Well, I think there's Houston, adding Reddick, Beltran. I think that they probably did the most that we may see during the regular season. The Red Sox trading for Chris Sale, and I thought it was more predictable than most, but the Red Sox going out and trading for Chris Sale was really a move for October. Because, the way they kind of whiffed this postseason, they probably said to themselves, look, we got to do something big. We've got to trade Benintendi or Moncada. And look, Sale was obviously available, and adding a top-flight starter like that really helps you in October. Look, the guy could pitch 4 games in a 7-game series. So I think that we'll see that pay dividends down the line, but I think a team like Houston served itself well. None of the National League teams really stick out for me. But yeah, I would say the Red Sox and Houston are probably those 2 teams that did the most for themselves.
Into the National League, we talk so much about the Cubs. What about the Nationals and the Mets and this budding little thing going on in the East? I think for the Mets, we go back 2 years ago and look at some of the young players and look at some of the injuries they had, and even like just bad luck. I think the Mets will be better this year.
Yeah, for sure. Look, I mean, every single player in their pitching rotation had some sort of injury. Noah Syndergaard to a less degree, but don't forget he dealt with those bone spurs. So I think all they need is a little bit of health here. I mean, look, remember what they did in 2015. That was an unbelievable rotation that looked like it was going to be the best in baseball for many years to come, and it just hasn't held up health-wise. So, I think that they have tons of talent. I think that they have the ability to go out and, win some of those games, too. It's kind of the opposite of what the Orioles did. Look, the Mets struggled offensively last year, but they have the ability, assuming that they're healthy, to go out and win games 2-1, 3-2. And again, same principle, counts the same in the win column, and you'd probably rather be the team that can win 3-2, 2-1 heading into October than the team that likes to play the high-scoring 8-9 games that you alluded to.
Seth, you know what? Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, you asked about the Nationals. Did not love the Adam Eaton trade. Obviously, he's a player I've had the opportunity to cover heavily here in Chicago. Didn't understand it, thought they gave up way too much, especially for a guy whose value we saw increase when he was moved to right field this year. He was a terrible center fielder. His value is much less as a center fielder, and that's where the Nationals plan on playing him. Now, that said, a lot of people were down on Daniel Murphy. The Nationals went out and signed him, and he turned in an MVP-like year this past year. So I agree that, or I can concede that it's possible that Adam Eaton could kind of shut up some of these doubters and critics, but, I'm skeptical for sure.
He is Seth Gruen. I tell you what, I'm most excited about here in the spring, not just the Super Bowl and some travels with my wife and a little bit of downtime for me personally with Bruce Springsteen down under, but I'm going to see some spring training out in Arizona in March. I'm going out there, so I don't have to wait till opening day. I'm going to get a little cactus. There's nothing better than spring training out in Arizona. It's one of my favorite things to do.
Nothing better. And you should bring Springsteen's autobiography. I'm in the middle of it right now.
You know what? I have an autographed copy when I met Bruce in Freehold on that first day. I have only read the preface. I've read like the first 3 pages. Everyone has raved about it, but I'm saving it for the flight to Australia. I'm going to read it on the planes. I have 14 hours of nothing but Bruce over the Pacific Ocean.
That's a good thing to save it for, man.
Baby, we were born to run. Tramps like us. Seth, great having you on, man. I appreciate the time, as always.
Yeah, it was good to catch up with you.
All right, man. He's out there in the land of hope and dreams of Chicago, Illinois, my kind of town. Seth Gruen, that's Gruen, out of Bleacher Report, as well as out on Twitter talking some baseball. You can find me out in the Buy a Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world. Our morning newspaper ships to your email inbox each and every morning at 7 a.m. It's all brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. It's still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life. I have now worked off the eggnog, worked off the pumpkin pie. Still working on a couple of those sugar cookies and those butter cookies because they were tasty around the holidays. PlanetFitness.com and Planet of Triumphs for some inspiration out there as well. We're in Houston all next week doing Super Bowl 51 coverage, and we're off to London in September. Speaking of traveling and busting out the passport, we'd love to have you join us. If you're considering that Ravens trip in jolly old London, join us. We got an incredible trip. We put together several hotel options as well. It's all up on the website at WNST.net. And by all means, throw me an email if you have interest. We'll give you some personal love and some help in going over to London with us in September. Nasty at WNST.net. That's the way to reach me. I am a very available individual. I'm on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, and streaming live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.